We got a big guest on the show this morning.
Yes, we
Pleased to
do.
be joined now by the governor of the great state of Maryland, Larry Hogan. Morning, Governor.
Good morning. Good morning. It's good to be with you guys.
Greetings from somewhere in New England. Are you still in New Hampshire? Where are you this morning?
Well, I woke up in New Hampshire this morning, but we're heading off to Maine just after I finish talking to you. We're going to be at the National Governors Association conference.
Okay, so National Governors Association, makes sense that you would be there as the governor of Maryland, but a stop in New Hampshire, which happens to be, a very important state in national politics. What exactly are you doing in New Hampshire, and is that a preview of something that is going to be in your future?
Well, New Hampshire is a beautiful state to visit during the summer. It was next door to Maine, and I was also in Connecticut and Massachusetts. So it's been a busy couple of days, but in about over 24 hours, I think we did about 8 or so interviews. We had a bunch of events from early in the morning till late at night, and we're just meeting folks and hearing their concerns about the economy and inflation. What they're thinking about.
Bryan Nehman just knew you were making an announcement this morning, Governor, on the C4 and Bryan Nehman show.
Well, you know that if I had an announcement to make, then I would definitely come on your show and do it.
Very good.
I'm not. I'm just going to keep being governor till next January, and then I'll have to find something to do.
Well, as governor, and you are full aware, even though you are not in town, of the continuing crisis of violence, Governor Hogan, that we continue to be plagued by ever since you were forced to bring the National Guard into our city after the riots following the death of Freddie Gray in May of 2015. We have seen the horrors of 300 homicides, 700 non-fatal shootings, carjackings. The most recent incident, a 48-year-old man shot and killed in broad daylight right at one of the busiest corners in the city. And, Governor, it just seems like it's unchecked. Just give me, you've watched this now for so long. What do you think about this?
Well, first of all, I think it's outrageous that the city has not taken any steps to solve any of that, in spite of all of the support and the money that we put in, and all of the many meetings and sitting down and talking to them about enforcing crime and arresting people and prosecuting and giving sentences out. It's basically, Baltimore is just they just continue to have no accountability whatsoever for their actions, and the shootings, they fought me for 8 years to try to put penalties on for people that continually shoot people in the streets, repeat violent offenders. They refuse to prosecute the smaller crimes that sometimes lead to bigger crimes, like this situation. I mean, we've been trying to get them to do something about the squeegee kids for years. The community's been crying out about it, they just continue to let it go on. And they are in violation of current laws on the books, impeding traffic, and they just won't enforce the law.
So on that issue, then, specifically, it is your belief that they don't have to do anything special, that they just have to enforce the law, and it's just a lack of will that is happening right now in Baltimore regarding squeegeers? Yeah,
I think, they've talked, every time we talk about this issue, I think the mayor calls them entrepreneurs, or they talk about trying to find jobs, and I'm all for, finding opportunities for some of these folks so they're not out in the middle of the street. But, we've had so many instances of people, just being harassed. People don't want to come to the city anymore. They're getting their windshields broken. They're, tearing off their windshield wipers. They're yelling at women in the cars by themselves and punching people, and now, shooting and killing someone. It's just outrageous.
Governor Larry Hogan is on board with us once again. He is on his way to the Governors Association in Maine, as he said. And, Governor, when it comes to other governors, when you talk to them about particularly these progressive prosecutors that are in these different places, we've seen this particularly the last couple of years. What are governors saying about how they, have to deal with cities that are basically becoming ungovernable because prosecutors refuse to do their job?
Yeah, other governors are facing the same problems, and we do talk about it. But, it's really, unfortunately, it's only the voters that can take action to remove the prosecutors or the mayors or the county commissioner, the city councils that are not doing the job, or the legislators that won't do the job. It's just, we can't just remove them, but the voters sure can. And we have a primary coming up where, I believe the voters of Baltimore City ought to remove the prosecutor who doesn't prosecute. But they have done it in other places. California and a number of cities, they threw out the progressive prosecutors that wouldn't prosecute crime.
Governor, a couple of national issues that are local issues as well, because determination by the Supreme Court. We'll start off with the gun ruling in New York, and I know you've already said that you get the process rolling on allowing more Marylanders to be able to carry a concealed weapon. But the commissioner and the mayor have said they believe that it's going to make the city less safe. Do you believe that to be true?
I think it's probably one of the most absurd things that I've ever heard from the mayor and the police commissioner. You know, they are refusing to take action on the hundreds of murders that are being committed with illegal guns, and yet they don't want law-abiding citizens to be able to go through a process and go through training and go through background checks to purchase it illegally. That is not the problem on the streets of Baltimore. I don't think a single person has been killed in Baltimore with a legally registered firearm. It's the gang members and the drug dealers and the ones doing the shooting. They don't follow gun laws. It's really for law-abiding citizens, and it's an order of the Supreme Court. So it doesn't really matter what the mayor and the police commissioner think. The Attorney General of Maryland and all of our lawyers have said this is what we have to do. This is the way we have to enforce the law.
Well, Governor Larry Hogan, on that point, I want to ask you, because it's very well known that the Attorney General now, Bryan, who, by the way, I served with in Annapolis, as the state senator, he was responsible for the 2013, mainly responsible for the 2013 gun laws that we have. Is he resisting? Yep. Are you getting cooperation from him in terms of how we're dealing with getting right to carry, or is there resistance? Because I know how he feels politically.
Yeah, no, politically, I think he's always been opposed to it, but he also he did issue his, the Attorney General's opinion is that we have to follow the law. We can't continue to impede people's licenses and require them to give a good and substantial reason. So I don't think he liked doing it, but he agrees that the Supreme Court's decision is the law.
The other case that I wanted to ask you about was the Dobbs ruling, which obviously overturned Roe versus Wade. It's not going to have really an impact here on Maryland, except for there's been some talk about, making Maryland a destination for women outside of the state to come and have an abortion. You're not going to be around in January as governor, but do you think that Democrats will try to push that, and what is your stance on that when it comes to abortion tourism?
Well, I think it's look, I have said that I'm personally opposed to abortion, but I wasn't going to take any actions to overturn the will of the voters or the laws. And in Maryland, the people have voted to have access to abortion, and that's exactly what we have in Maryland. We're one of many states that do. We're not one of the states that's going to change at all. But this talk about, they were trying to pull a budget gimmick. What money was not in the budget, but they tried to pull a sleight of hand to force me to put money in to expand abortions to people that weren't licensed and not doctors or nurses, and it was absurd. And the reasoning was because we had to do it for all the other people from the other states, and I just don't see how that's something our taxpayers should be paying for.
We're talking with Maryland Governor Larry Hogan. And, Governor, when it comes to the Inspector General of the Department of Education, you were primarily responsible for making sure that position even existed. And Mr. Right. Richard Henry produced a damning report of the grade changing of all the issues in Baltimore City. And out of his recommendations to the State Board of Education, Governor, he said there should be an emergency procurement to get a total performance audit of the schools. And it is sitting nowhere. We've had Inspector General Henry on our show. It's just going nowhere. Can't we expedite something happening? Because next thing you know, school's going to be starting and nothing's going to be changing.
Well, I agree with that. So first of all, we've been fighting to make the schools more accountable, and the legislature killed nearly all of our efforts to do that, except they did allow the education IG, and he's done a terrific job, but doesn't have the resources or the powers to really take action. So he did a good job of investigating the problem and bringing it to light. And when his report was finished, I forwarded it criminally to the state prosecutor. And so a state prosecutor does not discuss whether what's going on with an ongoing investigation. But the first day the report came out, we said this was so outrageous that and since the IG didn't have the powers, that it needed to be investigated by the state prosecutor, and I don't know the status of that, but I wouldn't say nothing's happening. I think they're looking into all these issues.
What about from the State Board of Education point of view?
State Board of Ed, as you know, is a completely independent, autonomous board that does not answer to me and does not take direction from us. But I think the board should take action, but I think it's more likely that an outside independent agency like the state prosecutor will probably get to the bottom of it. But I'm all for the state board doing procuring a performance audit, but we already know the performance is bad. I want to get to the fact that people might have done something wrong and get to the root of it.
When it comes, Governor, to now, as Bryan mentioned, I mean, you will still be governor until January of 2023, but there will be no other legislative session. As you begin to reflect over your time, and I'm not, saying you're out of office yet, but tell me what you think about when you are looking back now at your service as governor.
Well, I'm proud of the job that our team has done. I think, an overwhelming majority of Marylanders approve of the job we've done for 8 years. Maryland was 49th out of 50 states in economic performance. We went to number 6. It's the biggest economic turnaround in America. We cut taxes 8 years in a row by $4.8 billion. We took a $5 billion deficit and turned it into a couple of $1 billion surplus, the biggest in history, created more businesses, more jobs, put record funding in education, record funding in cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay, which is the cleanest it's been in a generation. So, we accomplished a heck of a lot, and I'm a Republican governor in a deep, deep blue state with a 70% progressive Democratic legislature. It's hard to get things done, but we have, and I think people are happy with. So we have a tremendous team of people in our cabinet and our staff, and everybody's worked their butts off for 8 years, and I think I look back and I'm proud of the work we did.
You've said multiple times that there is a battle for the soul of the Republican Party going on right now, and that you want a bigger tent. But I look at the poll numbers even here in Maryland, Governor, and despite your crazy high approval ratings for 8 years, and even where some other Republican governors are in New England on how well they perform in those, Donald Trump actually has a higher favorability rating than you do in the state of Maryland with Republicans. And there was another poll that said it would, if there was a head-to-head matchup between you and Donald Trump on the Republican side, he would win rather easily. Are you losing the battle of the soul?
Look, I think it's an ongoing battle. I in both of my elections, I got the exact same vote that Donald Trump did among conservatives and base Republicans, but unlike him, I added to that by winning nearly all the independents, a big chunk of Democrats and suburban women, and we have over 70% approval in every category. Republicans, Democrats, independents, black voters, white voters. I ran 45 points ahead of Donald Trump. He lost Maryland by 33 points, and I was reelected by 12. So, it's really not about,
But can I stop you on that, though? Because the difference is obviously that's the general election. Yeah. And you're going to do better in the general election. That's why you had such a high approval rating. But I'm specifically talking about the party, the Republican Party, and where it is today. I mean, is it even doable at this point? Or is this, the party of Donald Trump, and that's the road we're down from now on?
Well, the latest polls nationally that have come out say that about 34% of the Republican primary voters would like to see Donald Trump run again, but 58% do not want him to. So it's diminished dramatically since his peak in November of 20. I think it's going to go down even further. There's no question he's the 800-pound gorilla in the Republican Party, but his support is rapidly dwindling and will continue to do so over the next 2 years, in my opinion.
Slightly connected to that, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, who joins us right now. You've already made an endorsement in our governor's race. You've endorsed your former Commerce Secretary, former Labor Secretary, Kelly Schultz. But you were on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd talking about Democratic Governors Association putting bunches of money behind the other candidate, a main candidate running in that race, Donald Trump-supported candidate. And they're doing this all over the country, the Democratic Governors Association. Can you talk about that phenomenon that's going on right now?
Well, Kelly is a terrific candidate who was, a legislator and a small business owner and the cabinet secretary for 8 years in my administration. She's a terrific leader. I think she'd make a great governor. She's a proven conservative that the Republicans can trust, and she can make it a competitive race in November, and hopefully she can win that race. But the other guy is a conspiracy theory believing QAnon whack job who took 2 busloads of people to attack the Capitol and who was calling Mike Pence a traitor as they were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." He's a nut. He has no ability whatsoever to win a general election. I mean, I just said Trump lost Maryland by 33. He would break that record, I can tell you. He'd lose by 40 or 50 points. And so the Democrats desperately want him to be the nominee, and they're spending a couple $1 million to try to make that happen. But I think I'm hopeful that the voters will see past that and that they'll elect Kelly Schultz, who's the one that can win the election in November.
But also, they're doing this real quick, Governor, across the country, and this whole phenomenon, the Democratic Governors Association I'm talking about, pushing Trump candidates, and what that means to our politics, I guess is where I'm going, Governor.
Yeah, well, it's working in some places, in some places it's not. But we have it's very hypocritical that the Democratic Governors Association spending tens of millions of dollars to promote Trump conspiracy theorists, and so they're talking every day at the hearings about protecting democracy, and yet then on the same token they're working to elect folks that are spreading completely false nonsense to people. So it's sad, but basically you have the DGA colluding with some of the Trump folks to nominate unelectable people, and that just means Democrats winning in November.
Came out
and then we go back to in Maryland, if that were to happen, then we go back to one-party monopoly and 43 tax hikes in a row like we did under O'Malley, and we go back to 49th out of 50 states instead of the top 10.
The January 6 hearings yesterday, we heard that Andy Harris was in a meeting on December 21st with a couple other Republican congressmen, and Mike Pence was in there as well. And the hearing made it sound like they were trying to convince Mike Pence to basically do what he was supposed to do, what Trump wanted him to do, and kick back some of these electors back to the state. What do you make of that? Is it significant that Andy Harris was in that meeting?
Well, I don't know anything about the meeting, and unfortunately I had about a 14-hour day yesterday. It was stopped, so I wasn't watching television, so I didn't see the hearing. But look, Mike Pence is a friend of mine, and I served with Mike Pence in the Governors Association before he became vice president. I worked with him, on a weekly basis during COVID when he was heading up that effort. He's a guy I have a lot of respect for, and I think he had the courage to stand up and do what was right. But we're finding a lot of people were trying to get him to break the law.
Finally, from me, Governor Larry Hogan, who joins us right now, I have to come back to the issue of violence in our city, and particularly the youth aspect that we have so many young people now, Governor, particularly last year, whether it's the victims of crimes or perpetrators of crimes. Is there anything before you leave office that you, as Secretary of Department of Juvenile Justice, anything can do to really look at this youth phenomenon? It is not just in Baltimore City, Governor, but Baltimore County. These young people in carjackings, it's really exploding right now.
Yeah, well, I would say we've been trying to address many of these issues for a long time, but we can't do a whole lot without the cooperation of the leaders in Baltimore City. I mean, this is a phenomenon that's taking place in one place. It's about less than 10% of the population, but it's where all of these things are happening, and it's something we really have to address. But we've got to get leaders in the city who are willing to focus on it. I mean, I know they've identified a 15-year-old. He was actually 14 at the time of the shooting. Who was the person of interest in the shooting of 48-year-old Tim Reynolds, in the squeegee case. So but we have these kids that are out there, shooting people every day, and it's just the root of the violent crime problem.
I have to follow that up because the commissioner said yesterday they did not have a person of interest and they did not have a suspect. That he said that was not true. So where's
yeah. Well, maybe, he's the guy that's supposed to be arresting the people, but that's certainly the information that I've been given.
Okay. Well, finally on that, Governor, and that is when I talk about the juvenile issue, I know you're saying it's like Baltimore-centric, but in Prince George's County, Angela Alsobrooks had to get with Mayor Muriel Bowser to deal with their juveniles also carjacking. I guess there's a broken juvenile thing going on, and these juveniles, as you know, Governor, go on to be adult criminals, and that's my concern.
Yeah. No, I have the same concern, C4, and you're right, and I think Angela Alsobrooks and Mayor Bowser are taking it more seriously than the leaders in Baltimore are, and I think that nobody has figured out exactly how to solve the problem, but at least they're focused on the problem. And I think that's what we need to do in Baltimore.
Yeah, and just on that, because it does seem to me, we talk a lot about the Republican Party. The Republican Party gets a lot of mention, but, the Democratic Party has a battle going on right now as well. And the fact that like a Rashawn Baker, who I don't know if he's Hogan on the left or not, but he certainly has the same type of mentality, at least when it comes to crime aspect of it, and he just kind of gets pushed to the side. I mean, what do you think is the likelihood of crime and any kind of bill to come out of Annapolis? If you're not there, if there's a Democrat in the governor's mansion.
Well, I'm hoping that Kelly Schultz will be the governor and that she'll focus on that. But you're right. I think most of the leading candidates on the Democratic side are not. They're not talking about, not focused on, and probably won't get tough on crime. But it's we've said over and over again, it's more than 80% of the people in the state of Maryland want tougher sentences on violent criminals, and we've been pushing that. You even have the police commissioner and the mayor saying things like that now, but they've opposed every single one of our efforts to do something about it.
Well, Governor Larry Hogan, good luck on your trip to Maine, and maybe along the way you could call the C4 and Bryan Nehman show and tell us what the next move is for Governor Larry Hogan. We'd appreciate it.
All right, you'll be the first one I call.
Thank you, Governor. Appreciate you coming on the show.
I appreciate it.
All right,
thank you very much, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan. Everybody, Governor Larry Hogan.